So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
Hello, hello. Today is April 10th, 2023. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and this is The Rundown. China has sent a significant military presence to the Taiwanese Strait and has encircled the island of Taiwan, performing what they call a, quote, military exercise, or they're claiming is going to be a 3-day, quote, combat readiness patrol, which is being viewed by the United States as retaliation for a meeting between the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President of Taiwan. China has also imposed a travel ban and financial sanctions against American individuals associated with that visit. We're going to discuss that and I think do a little bit more discussion than normal of what's in the news later after we do our rundown, just because I think there's a good deal to cover. Meanwhile, highly classified leaks from NATO and the U.S. continue to spill out onto social media with the latest round of documents already authenticated by the United States, showing at least somewhat giving insight into the extent to which the U.S. has been eavesdropping on key allies, including Ukraine, Israel, and South Korea, as well as offering insight into the penetration of the FSB by American counterintelligence agencies, and unfortunately on Ukrainian tactical deployments. And countries which share intelligence with the United States, including Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the UK, are all examining their own procedures and doing an audit of internal counterintelligence agencies in order to see if perhaps they themselves have been the source of the leak. Oh, Jesus, I'm going to butcher this one. 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐴 Podolyak, who is the advisor to the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, has said that none of the released documents have actually got anything to do with Ukraine's real plans and are based on, quote, a large amount of fictitious information disseminated by Russia. Meanwhile, a judge in Delaware has ruled that Dominion voting systems can, in fact, force Rupert Murdoch and his sons to testify in their $1.6 billion defamation case against Fox News. Fox continues to say that it is, quote, proud of our coverage of the 2020 elections. Despite numerous leaked emails, it suggests that virtually all of the Fox hosts consider Trump to be unstable, reckless, and unqualified to hold any position in government, and despite the fact that they all appeared to know that he was lying about election tampering. Rupert Murdoch himself has already conceded in a sworn deposition that he knew that many of the claims made by his own hosts on Fox News were in fact false. Attorney Larry Levine has told the LA Times that Dominion has, quote, one of the strongest plaintiff cases that I have ever seen, and that he, quote, had a hard time envisioning a scenario in which Fox wins before the jury. He also added that he thought that there was, quote, highly compelling evidence of malice by Fox News in regards to Dominion voting claims. A number of other corporations have decided to start to jump onto the bandwagon. Smartmatic has now filed a suit for $2.7 billion against Fox News and also against Lou Dobbs, Rudy Giuliani, and other individual personalities at the, quote, news organization. Bank of America had to end an online conference on geopolitics early, like after the first day, when they received numerous complaints that their speakers were strongly pro-Russian. Daniel Sheehan, a Bank of America senior vice president for international relations, was quoted as saying that Zelensky was, quote, a master manipulator and mimic, and that there were serious concerns about him within the U.S. administration. One speaker, a professor of political science at the University of Rhode Island, gave a talk which was described as, quote, absolutely shocking and straight out of the foreign ministry of Russia, with one attendee saying, quote, it's more like the Bank of Russia than the Bank of America. Yes, that's very clever. Bank of America defended its actions, saying that all of the speakers are independent and a diversity of views should be expressed. Israel, meanwhile, has staged rare strikes in Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip, bombing Hamas military installations and claiming that this is retaliation after the militants fired nearly 36 rockets into Israel, wounding 2 people. These attacks are rare in a sense that they could be, in general, Israel, I don't know, I am tongue-tied today. In general, Israel does not fire into Lebanon unless they have a specific reason to, in large part because it could be seen as an escalation, especially with so few people killed in the Hamas attacks. And it could bring Hamas into a more aggressive conflict with Israel. Let's see. Yeah, all right. So we'll get into that one in a minute. There are also renewed calls for the impeachment of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas after revelations that he did not disclose luxury vacations he had attended paid for by Republican mega donor Harlan Crow. He said that he did not disclose these vacations because he had been advised by colleagues and members of the judiciary that he did not have to. This inspired demands that he say who in the judiciary gave such possibly illegal advice. It's been made worse by revelations as he starts to defend himself. He seems to dig the hole deeper, including pointing out that he actually started this relationship with the donor after he had already been appointed to the Supreme Court, suggesting that this was a friendship that he developed inappropriately after the fact, as opposed to a longtime friend that he had held before becoming a Supreme Court justice. And in what is being hailed as an extraordinary abuse of judicial power in the face of overwhelming scientific evidence, U.S. District Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk, I think that's correct, ordered the suspension of the FDA's approval of the abortion drug. Here we go again. Another thing I can't pronounce. I look at this and my brain just... mifepristone. I'm going to say mifepristone. I probably got that dead wrong. Which has been approved and still doing it. Which has been approved for use and has been safely used for more than 20 years since its approval in the year 2000. The drug is used, in fact, in nearly half of all abortions and has a fatality rate of 5 people for every 1 million who use it, which is roughly 1/4 the mortality rate of penicillin. Questions about whether the judge overstepped his power, radically changing healthcare options for millions of Americans, have set this case up for another U.S. Supreme Court visit by an abortion decision. Meanwhile, in completely unrelated news, the very same day, federal Judge Thomas O. Rice ordered the FDA to continue with its approval of the abortion drug, mifepristone, which has been approved for use and safely used for more than 20 years since its approval in 2000. The drug is used in nearly half of all abortions and has a fatality rate of roughly 5 people for every 1 million who use it, roughly 1/4 the mortality rate of penicillin. Again, Thomas O. Rice has insisted that the FDA not change its policies regarding the approval in direct contradiction to the earlier that day. Now, this this essentially has two decisions at odds with each other. That's actually not all that uncommon. You go in general with the most recent ruling, assuming that the most recent ruling would override the previous one. Judge Rice made an interesting splitting of the hairs here. What he has done is said that the FDA cannot change the status of the drug in the states that specifically were party to this ruling. So that would be 17 states. If you are in one of those states, then the FDA is not permitted to change the status of the drug. If you're in one of the other 33 states, the Texas ruling will apply, saying that the drug is suspended by the FDA. This is still a huge quagmire because the FDA is a federal organization and is supposed to apply its rulings, based on the science. It approves based on science, not based on politics. And its approvals are supposed to be for the entire country. And so now we have where the drug is approved for use in some states because it is now legally required to be approved in those states. Simply because that was the de facto starting position. And it is, the approval has been revoked in other states because a judge has chosen to revoke it. Go figure. Meanwhile, in the wake of the Covenant school shooting in Nashville, 3 state congressmen from Tennessee's House of Representatives attended a gun control protest on the House floor. In response, House Republicans attempted to expel all 3 of them and successfully removed 2 from power. The 3 were accused of knowingly and intentionally bringing disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives for dishonor. I wasn't aware you could dishonor the Texas House of Representatives, Lawrencetown, Texas. Tennessee. Slip of the tongue. Sorry, Texas House of Representatives. But at any rate, the representatives themselves, the 3 that were tried, have argued that they in fact did not violate the rules and their actions were both misrepresented and in some cases overtly lied about for the sole reason of expelling the Republicans and for cozying up to the gun lobby and cementing support from said lobby. In unrelated news, gun manufacturer Smith & Wesson plans to move its corporate headquarters from Springfield, Massachusetts, to a new site in Blount County, Tennessee. The company has already invested $125 million in creating a brand new facility and is expected to employ nearly 800 people at the headquarters. Smith & Wesson is also expected to move distribution, assembly, and plant injection molding operations to Tennessee as well. All told, this would make Tennessee the single largest employer of gun manufacturers in the country. And that is the rundown. Thank you all for joining us. Let's go over some of the, and I will also check the live chat. Let's start with the one we just did, which is the House representatives in Tennessee. I haven't seen footage of exactly what happened during those protests. Obviously, it is in everybody's interest that a modicum of decorum is kept in any either state or federal legislative body, and we've discussed this also when things have happened in the House or Senate in the United States. So I'm actually very sympathetic to the rules. Having said that, first of all, it's crystal clear that at least in some cases, lies were told about what they did or didn't do that violated the rules, including speaking out when the session had been called into order. And it appears in some cases they bent and or maybe even broke some of the rules. Having said that, expulsion is rarely applied to a first-time offender of rules of decorum in, again, any legislative body. So it seems like an extraordinarily aggressive move, and one which not a lot of ability was given by the lawmakers to actually deal with the what actually happened. No evidence was presented, at least not to the best of my understanding. So it does look like, well, they probably did a few things they shouldn't have. expulsion was not the appropriate course in this. And I might also add that those particular members have a good deal of experience. Well, let me rephrase that. Blacks in this country have a very different relationship with guns than whites, especially middle income or upper class white America. A very different relationship. And it's a lot less hypothetical. And there's a lot of causes for that, but there's a reason that in a legislative body, they're supposed to be representing all the people. And you're supposed to draw from a diversity of people because it's impossible for someone who grew up in a suburban, middle-class, white neighborhood to understand what goes on day to day for Black Americans in more urban areas of the country, in inner cities where guns are absolutely everywhere. I've noticed your view on whether cops are good or bad depends largely on the cops you've met, which it turns out cops are very different in the rural, middle-class white neighborhoods than they are in the inner cities. Very different in how they treat everybody. So I don't think the expulsion of anybody who brings a diversity of views and experiences to the body is helpful. I'm also well aware they don't care. And that should concern people. The fact that they're abusing the rules to get rid of dissent, to get rid of people who they don't agree with, and get rid of people who are protesting already a serious issue, but more serious for some demographics than others. And it turns out that they're in that demographic. So the lack of empathy for their position is also staggering. Occasion, a little heated when talking about issues that directly. In regards to Israel, we said this was going to happen. We predicted Israel striking into Lebanon about 2 weeks ago. We predicted it the night we actually did our first show on the mass rioting happening in Israel as they were calling for Netanyahu's ouster. It's very simple. We've all seen this. It's misdirection. It's, as we also predicted that this was going to happen with Taiwan. Why? Because Ping has been facing some of the harshest criticism he has ever had since he has been in office. COVID is raging through China. They have serious problems with their economy. They have serious problems in production, which has not recovered from the zero-tolerance policy. It hasn't even come close to recovering from the zero-tolerance policy. And it looks like they're going to be facing a food shortage, while they've also been incapable of actually keeping up with climate change, watching mass fires rage across huge swaths of China. And, Taiwan! Look, Taiwan! We're gonna start a fight with Taiwan, and we've been watching as the number of ships around Taiwan grow to record numbers, and it looks very frightening. We haven't reported on it because it really is just an exercise. We've discussed how and why they have no interest in actually getting into it with Taiwan, not the least of which is they've got their own problems, but they've got every interest in making it look like they're going to do it. So we don't believe that there's actually any danger to Taiwan, absent a accident of some kind that kills someone, including or especially a Chinese officer. But that notwithstanding, this kind of thing happens all the time. The size of the force is intimidating. It's supposed to be. Really, it's news only to mention it so that you can sit there and realize it's not really news. I've seen several interviews that have occurred with various members of the government of Taiwan, and they've all said they're not worried, and I think that that's actually true. I don't think they're just putting on a strong face. They're not. There's no reason for them to worry. So this is just a distraction. Same thing that China, so China is doing that with Taiwan, and Israel is now doing that with Lebanon. And we said this was going to happen. This is what the governments do. U.S. does it too. U.S. does it, I think, a little less. That could be just a bias on my part and that I'm so inured against it that I can't see it. But I think one of the reasons they do it less is because the nature of the press in the U.S. makes it a little harder to get away with and easier to get busted on it when you do it. But they do it. And they'd do it more if they could get away with it better. They do other things, the U.S. government. Let's see. The highly classified leaks from that we're going to have to get into. We're still talking to Macmillan about that. I was exchanging messages with him earlier today, and we're trying to assess what we're looking at. It looks like right now the biggest concern isn't the damage caused by the release of information. It's why is information getting released? If you got a leak, it's only a matter of time before something critical gets leaked through, and all of this is really embarrassing to the United States. I don't think anybody really is too worried about what's been released so far. Yes, we spy on our allies. Our allies spy on us, by the way. So none of that is really news. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to get caught, but it's, like those things. Every country does it, so it's not one of those things that they're too worried about right now. What they are worried about is where are these leaks coming from. Some of this, it's quite possible there's more than one leak. It's quite possible there's more than one source for this information, and different kinds of information are getting through in different kinds of way. Well, then why is it all getting published in such a close proximity? Any number of reasons. And it may also still be one source. I don't know. But I've heard an interesting theory that we're looking into right now, and we're just sort of researching and trying to figure out if there's any evidence to support it, that some of this material, certainly not all of it, some of this material absolutely Trump had no access to. Some of it is post-Trump. No way he had any of this material. Some of it he may have had. And so the question is, if he had it, we know the security in Mar-a-Lago was not tight. We know some of the shit that he took from the White House were in those transparent plastic bins. He finally put a lock on them when the NSA was like, hey, buddy. So I'd be interested in seeing if anything came not specifically from Trump deliberately, but I'd be stunned if there weren't Russian agents at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's reasonably easy to infiltrate. They don't really seem to do too many background checks. Russian agents have gotten into a lot harder places in the past. So that's an intriguing one. We don't have any evidence to support that anything came from Trump. There's reason to think it's at least a possibility because some of the documents he may have had. We don't know. So I'm pointing it out because I think that's a worthy thing to consider, but I think it's also worth noting if anyone comes out and says, oh, this came from Trump. There's no evidence yet. So we're going to look at it. We'll see what there is. I'm going to quickly check the live chat, and then I think that's going to be it. We are going to we're going to try to have on 𝐒𝐤𝐴𝑡 tomorrow, but I actually have not. I need to get in touch with him, and we need to sort that out. We're also going to do, obviously, Operator Starsky and the downtime on Thursday, so we've got a couple of shows coming up. Also, we do have our Ukraine charity for the UN Refugee Relief Fund. We're going to be talking more about that as it gets closer. It's still about 2 weeks away, but I hope you guys will consider helping us out with that. Come join us on the Discord and learn more about that, learn more about what we do. Like and subscribe and share this content if you like being made aware of the news at the top of every week. And if you feel like these streams are helpful, we hope that you will support us by sharing this information out and by giving us a like. So thank you all for that. And as I said, I'm going to finish up with the So, Titan, did you know African Americans in the U.S. are often fluent in English, and you can ask them about their life experiences, and they can understand? Oh, I'm shocked. Who knew? They're brand new, two guys, and so yeah. So I assume he's talking about the. Okay, so why isn't China going to invade Taiwan? A lot of very good reasons. First of all, they don't have a way to get any significant number of troops to Taiwan. They don't have transports. Their navy is big, but it's defensive. A couple of limitations in their navy. A lot of their navy uses, including their submarines, are still diesel powered. The difference between a diesel powered submarine and a nuclear powered submarine is staggering. A diesel-powered submarine cannot run its engines when it's underwater. You can't run the engines underwater. Why? Because people would suffocate. The fumes caused by an internal combustion engine in a small contained space and no way to circulate the air through, they'd all die. You can't use a diesel engine underwater. What they do is they have batteries. They charge the batteries. They take the ship up, and then they have to run the engine, and they'll just do circuits. So they're doing donuts. So you'll see a submarine just doing donuts or just traveling from A to B to C to get the engines running and to generate enough electricity that they can charge the batteries, and then they can go underwater. They can operate underwater for, I forget what the time is for a modern diesel Chinese submarine, but eventually they have to come back up, and they have to repeat the process. They also only have enough fuel to be out for, if they're active, if I recall, it's about 8 days. So 8 days if they're actually active, if they're not just, sitting around floating. Significant activity, they've got enough fuel for about 8 days, and then they got to come back. The U.S. nuclear submarine has enough fuel for about 10 years before it has to come back. It actually has fuel to go longer, but they have to come back and refit the nuclear power plant because of the waste products. But once it goes out, it doesn't need that refit. It doesn't need refueling. Doesn't need anything like that for 10 years. It can stay underwater the entire 10 years if they want to. May have an issue with food at some point. They can store up a tremendous amount of food, having said that. But that's really the only limitation. They can go get food and come back and yada, yada, yada. But for all intents and purposes, the submarine can stay down there as long as they like. Now, because of the limitations of diesel, and it's not just their submarines, it's the vast majority of their ships. They have some nuclear ships. Most are still diesel. What that means is that they can't actually project that power more than at a maximum 4 days out, because your ship has to go out 4 days, do whatever it's going to do, and then come around straight back because they've only got 8 days total. So they can project power at half the distance, that the max operating distance of their vehicles. That means if they're going to start a war with anybody, a huge percentage of their navy can't realistically be used in it. It also, keep in mind, when a ship comes up, when one of these diesel submarines comes up to recharge, it's extremely vulnerable from the air. So this is all defensive. Not all, but the vast majority of the Chinese. And it's not just their submarines. They use the submarines because it's the easiest go-to example of exactly why diesel is not an ideal solution. They don't have enough troops to easily do a landing in such a way that you would not utterly destroy all of Taiwan, and they don't want to destroy Taiwan. Also, all of us are reasonably familiar with Taiwan. If you look on the back of your shirt, it may say Made in Taiwan on there, and we get a lot of products from Taiwan. We are, in fact, the number 2 customers for Taiwan. Number 1 customer is China. They're having enough economic problems as it is. If they were to lose their biggest importer, Taiwan, in a war, Ping's problems get a lot worse very, very quickly. They have no easy way to engage in a war in Taiwan. It would be extremely costly, and the only real way they could do it would be to just destroy everything there, kill everybody there. And aside from the PR nightmare, it takes so long to rebuild, and they lose a huge source of products that right now, in a failing economy, they kind of need. So I don't see them going after Taiwan anytime soon. They saber rattle about it. Now, having said that, and I've said this before, we're going to do this just once so we don't have to do this again, at least until the next time. Taiwan is an existential threat to China. Taiwan wants to leave. So do most of the other provinces. They all want to leave. Nobody wants to be in China. They see enough of the outside world to understand why they'd rather not be in China. But they're in China. It's the way it is. Okay, fine. If Taiwan successfully leaves, other provinces are going to start doing the same thing, and there is a very real possibility of the collapse of China. China cannot permit Taiwan to leave. China cannot permit Taiwan to leave. Period. End of discussion. So we have this solution where we pretend they haven't left. Everybody pretends they haven't left. China pretends they haven't left. They've left, but that's why we don't recognize the president of Taiwan. That's why idiot presidents shouldn't be taking phone calls from the president of Taiwan, because the U.S. position is there is no president of Taiwan. So, and Trump's like, well, I want them to feel supported. Yeah, China will take Taiwan. I guarantee it. All of these problems aside, if Taiwan is truly recognized as independent, China will take it at any cost. Because if they don't, it's likely the fall of China. It's existential. They will take it if they have to. But it is so costly, they don't want to, so they saber rattle, and we're like, Taiwan's not a country, it's where we have a one China policy. We pretend that Taiwan hasn't left, and everybody's fine. That's why the policy works the way it does, and that's why we really shouldn't be tampering with it, and people should be a little careful when state officials go to Taiwan, because it's not recognized by China. All right, so I think that diesel subs are also more visible on infrared. Titan. They don't use a diesel underwater. I imagine they'd be very visible when they're on the surface. So even at night, you could see them. Once they're underwater, I don't know that they're any more visible. But for the fact that they are battery operated and they have to conserve battery power, there's not a lot of you can't get a lot of modern technology into a non-nuclear submarine, so I don't know what stealth technology there is to hide heat dissipation and so on and so forth. I assume there's some. I assume there's heat exchanges, any number of other ways to do it, and you can't do that on a battery-powered submarine nearly as well. So that, to that extent, yeah, that I think that may be a good point. Yeah, all right, so Sweet said it, I'll say it again, yes, so on, finally, and I'd said it earlier, on April 22nd, we will be having a fundraiser. Would really like anybody who knows anyone who'd like to come in. We're trying to get some guests. We've already got Starsky, the Shills, a few other content creators we've asked to come on. It's going to be 4 to 6 hours. All donations from this fundraiser are going to go to the UN Refugee Relief Fund, specifically the Ukrainian Relief Fund. It's a subcategory of that one. And those funds go directly mostly to Ukraine and Poland. Poland being important because Poland is the country that has currently the largest number of refugees, and really more than they can handle. So they need help there as well. But a lot of the money will go directly to Ukrainian refugees in Ukraine as well. And no, we don't have an Afghani. We have an Afghan. Titan got that confused earlier, and we all think it's very funny. But Godless Mom sewed a Ukrainian flag, or knitted, crocheted a Ukrainian flag, because apparently those three are three different things. Crocheted a Ukrainian flag. We will be giving that to the highest super chatter, along with a thank you letter from Operator Starsky, thank you letter from myself. And so that is going to be on the 22nd. We hope you guys will join us for that. More details will be coming out on the Discord. Like, subscribe, and you'll be able to know when that comes up. But I think that's going to be, I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to be able to do some good. And it's going to the UN. We all have our objections to the UN, but this charity has been independently rated by Charity Watch, I think it's called. And we have on the link, if you go to the show for the 22nd, you will see a link to a page that describes in more detail about this charity, about what we're going to be doing. And it also has all the Charity Watch ratings, and they give 87% of what they get goes directly to the people who need it. The 13% is administrative costs. So it's a good charity. It's reliable, and I think it's going to be good. And it's the UN, so that's just going to make things, I think, a lot easier. Oh, well, listen, if, sweet, thank you. Can you hit me up on Discord and let me know how to get in touch with Enforcer Matt? I would really appreciate it. I don't know how to get in touch with him, but thank you, sweet. Let me know in the Discord. And I know Starsky felt that he could get Anna from Ukraine, and I think we had at least one other that we were looking at. I'll be honest, I've been a little overwhelmed with a few other things, so I haven't really started the booking as much as I'd like to, and I got to get on that. So I'm going to be reaching out. But if you can get a hold of me on the Discord, you can. I'd love to get that information from you. So, and I may reach out to you if I see you on there, if that's all right. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us, and we will see you, barring any breaking news, which I've got to tell you, given the state of things, there's a 50-50 we'll be seeing you before our show on Thursday. But Thursday night, Lance McMillan, myself, Downtime, and my suspicion is we're going to be talking about the... all right, sweet, if you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. If you're on Facebook, I can be found there. If you're not, where the hell are you? But let's see. There's also, you could also just actually, the administrative account for InTime is admin@intimeshow.com. You can send an email there. But easiest is Twitter or Facebook. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to catching up with you on Thursday. Have a good evening all.